Like most sub-Saharan African countries, Côte d'Ivoire is not spared the effects of climate change. Their consequences are increasingly felt in environmental, health and economic terms. This is a global emergency that goes beyond national borders and calls for a global response. The key word is adaptation. And this is what is at stake at the National Seminar on Adaptation to Climate Change, which has just been held in Abidjan during the COP15 on desertification and drought. A meeting with a double national and regional interest, jointly organized by UNDP, the United Nations Development Programme, and the Ivorian Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development.
Les impacts du changement climatique
The impacts of climate change are pushing our planet's natural systems to their limits, putting lives and livelihoods at risk. We are dangerously close to tipping points that will result in large-scale and possibly irreversible changes to the climate system. Our capacity to adapt requires significant investments. But, and this must be emphasized, it is not just about money. It is also a matter of putting in place policies and strategies that systematically integrate the climate issue, the production and sharing of data and knowledge, the development of technological capacities and innovation. It is these kinds of policies and measures that we are called upon to make today in order to build a sustainable and resilient future for everything and everyone.
Pour construire un avenir durable et résilient pour tout et pour tous.
Mesdames et messieurs,
ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I invite you to participate actively in the various panels and scientific financial discussions and to take a particular interest in the technologies of adaptation to climate change exposed here, so that at the end of these 4 days of meeting and exchanges, we succeed in engaging the scientific wealth of Côte d'Ivoire and the sub-region on the issue of adaptation to climate change, and to share our experiences and good practices in public and private funding.
Adaptation to climate change includes strategies, initiatives and measures to reduce the vulnerability in natural and human systems to the effects of climate change. For the organizers, it was to promote adaptation solutions to researchers, academics, the public sector, and to discuss the challenges and opportunities for the private sector.
The challenge for UNDP is twofold. The first level, since 2015, the government of Côte d'Ivoire, through the Ministry of Environment, has requested UNDP to support in its low-carbon strategy and resilience to climate change. Therefore, it is with pleasure that UNDP accompanies Côte d'Ivoire on the development of the National Adaptation Plan, and that UNDP is accompanying Côte d'Ivoire on the revision of the nationally determined contributions. As for the second level, it lies in the fact that, in the framework of cooperation with the State of Côte d'Ivoire, UNDP places particular emphasis on resilience policies, disaster risk reduction and management, therefore, of natural resources.
In the context of regional solidarity, adaptation appears to be an absolute necessity to enable the West African region to reduce its vulnerability to climate risks.
One of the strategic interests of the organization of this seminar, which we welcome on all levels, is that it brings together many actors who are very involved in the fight against climate change, including specialists on the issue of research and development. As you know, we always say that the Sahel is vulnerable, but what we missed a lot to be able to illustrate this is that climate, above all, is science. When you say that you are vulnerable, you have to prove it scientifically, with reliable data, with concrete things. And so this is what makes the place of science, scientists and actors like academics, organizations like Wascal and research centers like Climat, which had been pushed by Côte d'Ivoire. We consider ourselves as a school to be able to create the conditions to bring together all these actors who meet in platforms, in cooperatives, to initiate good things in the field of recycling, in the field of sustainable agriculture. All these things are to be welcomed, and we think to bring them together to the level of the Commission so that we can organize actions of the regional forum which exceed the national dynamics.
Through the nationally determined contributions support program, UNDP supports states to better understand the effects of climate change. Faced with the urgency of climate challenges, adaptation initiatives are multiplying. This tree planting operation called the COP15 Forest, initiated by the Ivorian government in collaboration with UNDP, is a perfect illustration.
On traduit en acte cette volonté affichée.
We turn into action this declared will to fight against deforestation and also to restore the land. By the acts that we have just accomplished, we invite the citizens of the world. But let's make a special appeal to the Ivorians to tell them that here, in 2 weeks, we discuss the future of the world, the sustainability of our environment, our nature, our living space, which today, as we know, by humans, is threatened.
Par des actes humains et menacés.
In Côte d'Ivoire, studies conducted in the field reveal that men and women face different effects depending on their level of vulnerability, preparedness, and resilience to climate shocks. One of the elements that contribute to the weakness of women's potential to adapt to climate change is the fact that gender is not systematically taken into account in most structures that support development at the local level. As I said, we had interviews with institutional actors, and there are very few actors who are able to appreciate the link between gender and climate change. Therefore, there is a work to be done at this level, already at the institutional level, to sensitize and train these development actors who support community actors for development at the local level, so that they can understand that the relevance of taking gender into account in the fight against climate change. According to estimates, the cost of climate adaptation in developing countries could reach $300 billion per year by 2030. Financing mechanisms for adaptation have been created with the objective of providing developing countries with financial resources to mitigate the effects of climate change and build community resilience.
Le Fonds vert pour le climat a comme première particularité que c'est le plus grand.
The Green Climate's first particularity is that it is the largest climate fund dedicated entirely to helping developing countries achieve their climate ambitions. Whether it is in terms of mitigation, that is to say, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, or in terms of adaptation, which, as you know, is a priority in particular for African countries. So, our interventions, although they can contribute to development, are above all to ensure that countries can achieve their ambitions. And we do this through investments or projects with the collaboration of partners that we call accredited entities, and also through preparatory support, which is a form of technical assistance program that we do in coordination with the designated national focal points and authorities. So, we can say this is one of the particularities of the Green Climate Fund, and we dedicate our actions, our intervention on 8 areas of intervention, 4 in mitigation, 4 in adaptation. Our primary criterion is not profitability, but the potential impact, as well as a paradigm shift to help our partner countries change completely.
Développement soutenable et de financement vert.
I would say this is an excellent opportunity. I came here in Abidjan mainly for the COP15 on desertification, But I was pleasantly surprised by a national seminar on adaptation to climate change. Adaptation is a concept that is currently a little unloved. It is not as well funded as mitigation. In a country that puts forward a seminar on adaptation, for us it is very important because we come to present how we can help in African countries, for example in Côte d'Ivoire. Earlier, I explained how to access the adaptation fund, what the evaluation criteria are. It also consists in sharing the experiences we have in other countries. And in Côte d'Ivoire, we have a national entity that has access to the adaptation fund. The particularity of the adaptation fund is that we favor direct access. But from the start, from the creation of the fund, what we wanted to emphasize was how countries can access our financing directly. So the direct access modality is a credo for us. It is important. To date, we have about 50 implementing entities, more than half of which are national implementing entities. So in Côte d'Ivoire, we have an association called FIRCA that has just been accredited, and it will be able to help Côte d'Ivoire to mobilize adaptation funding directly without going through intermediaries, which are sometimes quite costly.
One of the objectives of this seminar was to promote innovations and technologies for adaptation to climate change. Indeed, the UNDP promotes innovative solutions in environmental protection and adaptation strategies. Several young entrepreneurs took advantage of this seminar to present their solutions.
Nous sommes dans le secteur de l'agriculture au sol.
We are in the soilless agriculture sector, market gardening. When we talk about soilless agriculture, we're talking about plants. So here, we are in the field of soilless agriculture of market gardening. We're going to develop our cultivation technique in other types of soils based on coconut fiber. The interest for a person to use this practice is that you are not going to wait for rain to irrigate these plants. We have drip irrigation systems to 150 to 500 square meters that he can deploy to his plantation. Here, we're talking about off-season. We're not going to wait for the rain to be able to irrigate our plant. And what is interesting is that we can move the bag from point A to point B. We can do it on high ground. We can do it at any time of the year.
Nous faisons la promotion de l'agroécologie en milieu rural.
We promote agroecology in rural areas. We propose solutions to be able to use all the agricultural residues to be able to reconstitute the arid soils. The interest of such a method is to bring our community to be able to increase the agricultural incomes with the material that we can find locally, instead of spending money to buy other chemicals that destroy our environment and our land in the long run.
The Queen of Contest is a startup specialized in valorization of organic waste into green coal. So, how does it work in practice? We go to the field, we collect waste that we bring to our site, and we go through a process. At the end, we produce coal. And around this green coal, we have developed several ranges of coal. So we produce barbecue charcoal for the clean cooking energy, so for everything that is cooking, barbecue. We also have activated charcoal for water treatment in rural areas, for cosmetics, and even for consumption. Officially launched during this seminar, the SCALA program, implemented with the support of UNDP and FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, responds to the urgent need for increased action to address the impacts of climate change in Côte d'Ivoire in the agriculture and land use sectors.
Le SCALA est un programme qui est financé par l'Allemagne à travers...
SCALA is a program financed by Germany through the BMU to the tune of $12 million for 12 countries, including Côte d'Ivoire, and implemented jointly by the FAO and the UNDP. So, this program essentially aims to raise the climate ambition in the flagship policy documents of climate resilience and therefore of low-carbon strategy, of which we know in particular the nationally determined contributions and the National Adaptation Plan. Therefore, the objective of this program will be to treat as a priority the land use and agriculture sectors, which are essential sectors of growth of GDP at the national level. These sectors are very vulnerable to climate change. This response will allow to align the national policies with the climate ambition, to be able to align the national budget with the reinforcement and the mobilization of resources both endogenous and external, and to mobilize more the private sector in the accompaniment of these different policies and measures.
Le secteur privé dans l'accompagnement donc de ces différentes politiques et mesures.
Global warming is increasingly being felt. The negative consequences, particularly for development, are well known. The Paris Agreement obliges signatory states to implement climate change adaptation measures through national plans, climate information systems, protection measures, and investment for a green economy.